Notice of motion as background information. Notes that the Council notes that the information contained in this report about the direction relating the fluoridation of Whangarei's water supply and legal advice relevant to the notice of motion. 2. Notes the legal advice on the legal risks, which include the potential for prosecution, intervention by the Minister of Local Government, the Ministry of the Health, directly intervening to implement the directive, the Ministry of Health seeking a court order for implementation, and the risk of a personal liability for elected members. 3. Notes that the Ministry of Health have indicated that the Bill of Rights review is in its final stage and that they hope it will be completed by the end of the year. And 4. Notes that the staff will keep elected members informed of any new or updated information as it becomes available. I believe that's another fine by Councillor Peters. I've moved that. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Conniff, you're seconding that? Councillors, at this point, as many of you may understand, and I know I have had questions from the councillors previously in relation to why we put the background information before the notice of motion. This is enabling the councillors to understand their legal responsibilities, and the council staff do not have the ability to alter the notice of motion that's been put by the council law. So this allows the staff to actually provide background information so that when the discussion on the notice of motion happens, that they can actually have all that information and also be able to ask any questions. At this present moment, I'm going to open up to any questions of the staff. Is there any questions? Councillor Benney.
Good morning. I've actually got quite a few questions, but I'm going to try and limit them as much as I can. And thank you, staff, for bringing this to us. There are a few things that I've got a couple of issues with. So on the front page of that, it says that we are required to fluoridate our water supply. That's actually not quite the case, is it?
So you're asking the staff if that...
Yep, is what states here about fluoridating our water supply is what the direction is.
Andrew, I will leave that over to you to answer that. However, from my understanding, the directive is are you more questioning over the
I'll give the answer.
Okay.
The directive is to fluoridate drinking water.
Correct.
My point is, how can we fluoridate drinking water alone without fluoridating the rest of our water supply? That's the question.
Okay. So Andrew, able to answer that.
Through the Chair, the simple answer is we can't. We have to fluoridate the whole system.
Cool. Okay. And there is no other way other than expensively, a way beyond expense system that would have pipes into people's private dwellings.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So in item 4.2, it's got the decision of whether or not to fluoridate a water supply is not currently a power or function of local authorities. I completely agree with that. The question is it the council's function to fluoridate the water?
I believe that's going to be a question probably for Rebecca to answer.
Yes, it is.
And so any responsibilities in relation to fluoridating that water fall back to this council?
Yes.
So, for instance, hypothetically, if someone has a rash and reacts to fluoride in their water, who's responsible? Is it the Ministry of Health or is it the local council?
If we are fluoridating the water...
Just a bit closer, please, if you could.
Sorry. If we're fluoridating the water within the prescribed amounts, then it would be the Ministry. If there was some error in how it was administered, then it would be us.
Louder, please.
Yeah, just a little bit closer with it, I think, if we could. Okay, so there's some mixed messages there as to who would actually be liable for any issues with that. Just going on to item 4.2.3, which is the declaration taken by councillors, and the end query of that is a statement about latitudinal leeway, which allows for an elected member to willfully disregard the law or a lawful instruction.
Yes.
So by lawful instruction, so do you accept that the directive has been deemed unlawful, although valid?
I would say that there's been an error of law in making the directive, which has been instructed to be corrected, but that the directive itself is lawful to follow.
Okay, we'll move on. I'll disagree with that one. And on page 21, we get onto the personal liability for elected members. Just for the information of the public here, the piece that says about those who abstain that would be personally liable for any decisions that were voted on today, that's not the case, is it?
No, that was an error.
Cool. Okay, thank you for that. And just lastly, almost, you've listed all the options in there for councillors, and I appreciate that, but some options have been left out, and I just sort of wonder why. One is the council has an option to take an injunction out against, as stated by Justice Radich in his decision, if we were directed to fluoridate and we went ahead with it. The second one is there could possibly be no action from the Ministry of Health, and the third possible outcome could be that the Ministry of Health could wait until the end of the court decision in June, which in my mind is the most likely option. And those weren't put in there, I just wonder why.
So just to clarify, your question is why those other options weren't included within the
So
assessment?
there's background information, yes.
Okay.
Well, the injunction, the case law that's listed in the back of the agenda item,
Sorry, members of the public, please be well aware that the staff member is speaking.
Yeah, we want nice and close if we can. Yes.
okay, I
Please.
don't think I could get any closer to it at the moment, or I will be eating it. With regard to the injunction, that has been tried and failed on numerous occasions, and the Radich said that if if the Ministry of Health initiated legal proceedings against council, that would be the moment to apply for an injunction. So that's why that wasn't listed in the paper. We're not at that stage. In terms of doing nothing, it seems unlikely that the ministry would do nothing.
Let's be, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's my legal opinion.
yeah, and that's fair. That's legal opinion. That's fine.
There
So
was a third one, sorry, Councillor Benney.
The third point is that the ministry could conceivably leave it until June next year after the court case.
It could.
Yes, and that is definitely an option in there, and that to me that is the most likely option, and I'm just surprised it's not in there. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
okay. Dominic would like to just add a part to this.
Just to clarify, and just linking back to the purpose of this paper, it is a paper outlining the legal obligations and risks in relation to the notice of motion. So things like an option of considering an injunction isn't what's provided for in the notice of motion. It's purely targeted to what are the legal risks associated with this, accepting the points raised.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Councillor Hulse, I saw your mic up before. Are you asking questions?
Your Worship, no. Councillor Benney asked a question. I was going to ask for clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by the councillors? Councillor Mackenzie.
Just a question about money. So it makes reference to the $4.55 million of Ministry of Health funding that the government will receive, that the council will receive from government, and my understanding is the first half of that has been paid out, but the second half isn't paid out until commissioning. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so if there wasn't commissioning taking place, is it your expectation that the council would have to find that other $2.28 million from somewhere unfunded?
The agreement is that that money will only be paid at commissioning. So if we don't commission, we've already spent the money. So yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ruka.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. So, obviously this is legislation from the government. You know, they are requiring this decision of us as council. Are there any other examples, you know, where government has created legislation for councils that we've opposed, or that any council has opposed? I'm just trying to find a comparison to help.
Rebecca, I'm going to hand that one over to you because you're probably the best one to answer that.
Through the chair, nothing immediately comes to mind, but I can go away and have a look.
Oh, that would be cool. Thank you.
No further questions? No further questions. Councillors, as my right of reply, I'm just going to say again, this information that's been provided has been provided by the staff for to be able to carry with the continuation of a notice of motion and to have the proper debate with that. So this is allowing that information, the background information to be included. There is, and as Councillor Benney has highlighted, there was a discrepancy which Rebecca has corrected on that. And it is, and again, I just remind you again, it is just information, background information for you to help you to make your decision. With that being said, all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Councillor Benney, would you like that recorded? Okay. That's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 6.2. And Councillor Benney, you are moving this. Can you read your notice of motion, please? And that is on page 27, and I believe there is a changed version of this.
Slight change. Yes.
Slight change, yes. Andrew and Sarah, I would still recommend you to stay there. Yes, please.
My notice of motion. In accordance with clause 27.4 of the Whangarei District Council Standing Orders, as mover of the original notice of motion, I propose the following alterations to the notice of motion. That the Council, 1, resolves to not add fluoride to the Whangarei District's water supplies as required by the Directive from the Ministry of Health, MOH. 2, the decision is based on recent court rulings and research that question the effectiveness, safety and legality of fluoridation. And 3, that the Mayor and the Chief Executive write to the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health and the Coalition Government advising them of this decision.
As per the standing orders, we need to have an agreement of all the council to approve that we're going to go through this, the amended notice of motion. So could I just have an agreement that they're all prepared to accept the amended notice of motion? Yes. Aye. Is there any opposed? No. Councillor Benney, I will second that for you. So you can speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Try and keep this brief. Firstly, thank you to the public for taking the time to attend today and all the work that you have done to educate the public on this topic. Councillors, there is real concern from the public that fluoride will be added to our water supplies. In 2002, the last meaningful referendum, it was clear by a clear margin that Whangarei City do not want fluoride in our water supply. We have never had fluoride in our water supply. Let's keep it that way. We have been directed to fluoridate our drinking water by the previous Director General of Health, who threw this grenade at 14 councils, took his knighthood and rode off into the sunset. How do we fluoridate just our drinking water? We can't. Drinking water is a tiny percentage of our water supply. Yet we are being told to put a neurotoxin, a poison, into our total water supply, which will mean you will wash in it, cook with it, bathe in it, etc. Firstly, let's dispel some myths. The product we will be putting in our water is hydrofluorosilicic acid. It contains fluoride, along with other nasty chemicals, like arsenic and lead. A little aside here, anybody see the news this morning?
Councillor, keep with your talk.
This is part of my talk, if I could.
You can't ask for the councillors to have a response to that. So
it's a rhetorical question.
Thank you.
If anybody saw the news this morning, you will have seen the heightened levels of arsenic and lead in Auckland and Hamilton's water supply. Just so happens that Auckland and Hamilton fluoridate their water supplies. So, it contains nasty chemicals other than fluoride. It is an industrial waste product from the fertiliser industry. All scientists agree that it is harmful to health. The disagreement is at what level. Previous science has said that a level of 0.7 milligrams per litre is safe. That science is now not only under question, it has been accepted by most of the countries in the world that the level of 0.7 is not safe. This directive was ruled unlawful in November 2023, and the new Director General of Health was instructed to assess this directive in relation to the Bill of Rights Act over 12 months ago. That assessment has not been done, despite all the resources available. I'm sure our legal counsel will agree this is not a complicated legal argument. In 2018, the New Zealand Supreme Court ruled fluoridation of our water supply is compulsory mass medication. Section 11 of the Bill of Rights Act is very short, sharp and simple. It says, and I'll quote this, "Everyone has the right to refuse to undergo any medical treatment." Section 11 of the Bill of Rights Act. How can anyone choose not to ingest fluoride if it is put in our water supply? They cannot. That is a major stumbling block, in my view, for the Director General of Health. Historically, pro-fluoride advocates have said, trust the science. And to be fair, that was a good argument. However, recent science has seriously questioned the safety and effectiveness of fluoride. More recently, serious science studies have not only questioned the use of fluoride, they have proved that it is not safe or effective. We cannot ignore that, people. Countries all over the world have paused and stopped fluoridation because of the concerns. Is it safe? Is it efficient? The answer is clearly no. New Zealand is the only country that is ramping this up. If there wasn't an alternative, or if this was the best option, I would be right behind it. We've got to look after our children's health. But it is not. It is not even close to the best option. There are many alternative options. Child Smile in Scotland is a shining light on how to get fluoride into our system, into our dental health, and not harm people's health. They don't put it in their water supply anymore, Scotland. We can achieve considerably better results, cheaper, and more importantly, without mass medicating the whole population. Last week in the Herald, an audit of New Zealand school tuck shops showed they were still predominantly selling soft drinks and sugary foods as their main contributor. We could start there. Cost you nothing. I'm finishing up. In 2015, Sir Peter Gluckman, a very well-respected New Zealander, was commissioned by the Ministry of Health to report on this country's response to asbestos. In conclusion, he stated that New Zealand is lagging behind the rest of the world in our response to asbestos. I fear we are doing the same with fluoride. Councils all over the country are watching today to see what happens today. We must support the basic human right that you must have the choice of what goes into your body. To my fellow councillors, you put your hand up to lead and were selected to be leaders. Now is the time to lead. This reminded me of a little quote. The whole world saw the apple fall, but only Newton asked why. Thank you.
Please refrain from clapping. That is affecting the microphones and the speakers in here, and for all the people who are listening online. We encourage you, if you are going to show the sign of clapping, please use the sign language version, which is to raise your hands like this. We do have an issue with the microphones, and they will reverberate through to the speakers, so please be well aware of that. Thank you for your cooperation.
Turn the speakers up so we can hear.
Members of the public, I will ask you once and only once. please be respectful. If you cannot hear, that is, just make it known to myself or one of the security guards out there, and they will apply their pressure on that. However, on saying that, please be respectful of the councillors and the debating chamber. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, staff. There's been lots and lots and lots of effort put in to this fiasco, for want of a better word. And I, for one, fully back Councillor Benney and his efforts. He's worked tirelessly and put together a very, very compelling argument. So I will keep this extremely short and say, well done, Councillor Benney, you have my support.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions. Is there a particular demographic or, I guess, target of this, of fluoridating our water supply? Is it for a particular audience? Is it for a particular demographic, or, you know, in terms of that directive?
Thank you, Councillor Rooker, for that question. The information, now Andrew can correct me on this, the information that I have received came from the Minister of Health, specifically referring to the condition of people's teeth in Northland and the reason why there was a need for fluoridation. There was no indication over whether it was specific over a certain group of people. There was just a general trend in Northland for the tooth decay.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So, Andrew, you're nodding to that one? Yep.
Thank you. And so, so is it correct that of our town supply, only 1% of it is used for drinking, approximately?
Andrew, I know that that is a question which may not be able to answer, but I'll see if you can answer that.
I think that the general rule is it's under 5% anyway. The exact amount obviously varies, but yeah, it's pretty low.
Can I speak to it?
You can speak to it, yes.
Thank you, Bishop. Oh, I just, so for me, it's really, there are a lot of compelling arguments against fluoridation and fluoride in the water. Really, what the main concern for me is that such a small percentage of who I think are vulnerable to bad oral hygiene are just not drinking water anyway. That's kind of my, that's my major concern. My major concern is that it will be not effective because, and so just in context, the demographic who I see this being fit for is more likely our kids and our young ones. And so I would argue that a lot of them, one, it's only a very, very small percentage of our town supply that's used for drinking, and then I would argue that an even smaller amount of that is going to be drunk by the ones who need to be drinking tap water. So that's really my main concern with fluoridation, is how ineffective I think it will be. The other side of that for me is is just your ability to choose whether you want it or not. Those two things combine why I support this motion. I don't think it's an effective way to do it. I think we can be educating our community, our whānau, our tamariki to be more concerned about what they're, you know, the sugary drinks, like just sugar in general. I think sugar is a major concern for health in general. And then obviously as a byproduct of that we have bad oral hygiene as well. So I support this notice of motion. My only real concern is the potential for, and this is my only reservation as to why I'm would even second guess not voting for this, and it's the personal liability, and then the liability of the council, and then the potential liability of our community, our ratepayers, to have to pay potential fines, you know, as the warnings we've got. So that's really my only reservation, is the liability of this motion, but I do support the motion today. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Roka. And the members of the public are showing support there. Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say a huge thank you to Councillor Benney for all his work. He's done an amazing job. Thanks. Everyone knows my stand on fluoridation, so I support this motion. As far as the comments by Councillor Roka of liability, I think it goes back to what Councillor Benney says, and we need to take a stand, and let's do it. Let's take a stand, lead the way, and if there's liability, well, we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Any other councillors? Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, first of all, I want to thank our staff for the work they've done on this, and also acknowledge that this is an uncomfortable place for them to be, and they're just doing their job. So I think we should all acknowledge that, and they've done a great job in getting us to this place. I also want to just commend Councillor Benney for his tireless work on this. The views he holds are personally, deeply, passionately held. I acknowledge that, and well articulated. So, before I say anything else, so there's a however from me. The directive from the Director General of Health. We've had recent confirmation that directive remains valid, albeit there is a review of the Bill of Rights Act. And I think it's unfair to point the finger at the previous Director General of Health, because this has been confirmed by the current Director of Health as well. So this is not a political issue. This is a health issue. Sorry, Your Worship, I'm getting constant back chat in my ear here, and it's very difficult to concentrate with the level of noise I'm getting.
Members of the public, please be well aware, Councillor Holmes is speaking here, and please give him the respect that he deserves.
Thank you, Your Worship. Importantly for me, elected members of this chamber are not qualified to interpret the myriad scientific studies and reports and rulings. We're just not qualified to do that. That's the job of central government through the Director General of Health. The Director General of Health is responsible for the nation's health. In this matter, my personal view is that they can be the only source of absolute truth in this.
Members of the public, once again, I do remind you again, please.
We've had a number of references to other rulings, some of them overseas, which again are of little relevance to this. This is also about the role of central government, about parliamentary sovereignty. As local government, we can't cherry-pick the rules that we want to adhere to and the ones that we want to ignore. That's not our role. That's a shortcut to anarchy. Central government is elected, we have a democratic process, and they...
Members of the public, that is it, that's the last warning.
So, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. One of the final things I want to say is the recent legal opinion confirms my own view that we could be in breach of the Local Government Act if we vote for this. And if we do that, we'll be in direct contravention of the directive from the Director General of Health, issued under the Health Act. I also want to make comment about our relationship with central government. If we vote for this today, that will send a clear and strong and unambiguous message to the government, as others have said. However, I think the message it sends is that we don't want to work collaboratively with central government. And I think that's a very strong statement for us to make when we are trying to grow Northland, trying to grow Whangarei, trying to elicit extra funding from government for projects which are essential to the growth, stability and wealth of this region. And I think it's a very difficult discussion to have with central government if we tell them that we're not prepared to abide by directives. There's the small issue of the funding for this equipment as well, as Councillor Mackenzie raised in a previous debate. 4.55 million, I understand, is the total cost. We've had half already, and the question really was not properly answered, I think, is that if we don't do this, there's a good chance that we're going to have to repay that 2.25 million back to government, which is unbudgeted. My final comment really is around human rights, and again, Councillor Benney very well articulated the importance of human rights. Now, as a previous Director General of Amnesty International, let me tell you that I'm pretty well aware of the of human rights and of the Bill of Rights Act and the universality of human rights. We can't cherry-pick human rights no more than we can cherry-pick the rules that we decide to observe. And so, with the greatest respect to the speakers before me, whose views I acknowledge and respect, I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you for highlighting about the funds again. Thank you for highlighting that. Councillor Cooper.
A question at this stage, Your Worship. One of the areas that is central to this argument, I feel, is the amounts of fluoride that is being put in the water, and what is safe and not safe. Can I ask Andrew Venmore, our water expert, what assurances we have that that when we put fluoride in the water, it will consistently be within the boundaries that we say it's going to be within?
Very good question for Andrew there.
Through the chair. So we would, the requirement is to dose between 0.7 and 1. So we would set our system up probably to dose at 0.8 to give us a little bit of leeway. Our systems are alarmed if it drops below 0.7 or above 0.1. Our technicians would be alarmed of that and they would make changes. We would also have an upper limit, probably just above 1.1. If it went to that level, the system would shut down automatically. So that would be how we'd operate a system like this. Now, the measurements are taken continuously, so it's a pretty accurate system, but it would be within those parameters.
Andrew, just to continue with that questioning there, which was raised before, do you have any knowledge of the effect on the equipment of adding fluoride? Yeah, fluoride can have a little bit of effect on the pH of the water, but we adjust the pH before it leaves the treatment plant. So in terms of downstream effects, it doesn't really have an impact, if that was your question. Could you also provide your view on why the treatment plants in another area, which was reported in the paper last week, why it failed?
I don't know that. Sorry, I'm not aware of the details of why it might have failed. It depends on the operating systems, how frequently they're checked and how frequently they're monitored, and the way that the dosing equipment is applied. But I mean, there's always risks with these systems, but we've got very good controls whereby if things get out of the required limits, we would actually shut the treatment plants down or stop the dosing, whichever is most appropriate at the time.
And for clarity purposes, Andrew, what is the time limit between identifying the alarms and shutting the system down?
Instantaneous if it went above the upper limits that we would set.
Instant, okay. Thank you. Councillor Harding.
Mihi ana kia koe e te koro mātua mō te karakia kia mātou ma tēnei ata. Mihi nui. And to our staff, mihi ana kia koutou katoa, as with other councillors. You know, this has been an arduous journey and you've been trying to provide us the narrative in black and white so that we can get to these points of decision making. So we mihi to you all as well. Just a first partai coming off the back of Councillor Ruka's questions, and mine's kind of around that urban-rural split. So, you know, often talking about those isolated and rural areas where we know that a lot of these services and dental services that can't get to. Do we have an idea around those populations and whether this adding fluoride to water would impact on them or not? Because I'm aware that there's a lot of residents that have their own tanks and that, so clearly they won't be impacted, will they?
Yeah, through the chair, about between 70 and 80% of the population is on a town water supply that would be impacted. So it's around 20 to 25% that wouldn't receive any fluoridated water. And you're correct, yeah, the people that aren't on the town supply wouldn't be impacted at all by this.
Yeah, and I guess my angle on that is, we know the statistics, we know the demographics of people. I guess also, for our Māori people who live in those rural and those isolated areas. So this. If there was a move by the Director General in that time around trying to capture that demographic, I don't think it's, and then to apply, it's kind of the one rule fits everybody, just kind of catch all. That makes me think a little bit more about specifically who is the audience that they're trying to capture in this. And look, I want to acknowledge Councillor Benney's staunch leadership and approach right from the get-go. He has been doing this, and obviously the public's interest everywhere we've been, especially out in Ruakaka, Bream Bay. And as elected members, we're constantly having to navigate the government directives that come through central government, and this one in particular. So this government directive overrides our local government decision making, something that they said they're quite happy for us to do. Look after your own net. And this is but one of those kaupapa that we're always having to dodge. The avalanche comes down and we have to wear it. And then we're in this, talking about the putia, about the money, almost in this blackmailing position of, here is a whole tranche of putia, go get your infrastructure ready for it, you're half committed to it, you don't have enough time, so you ask for an extension, they give you an extension, but the extension means that you are absolutely going to do this. So you're almost half committed when, Councillor Benney is still getting all his ducks in a row to go, well, hang on a minute, we haven't quite got this all over the show here. And we build this infrastructure, we don't agree with it, we will be in breach, and guess who's gonna pay for it? Our ratepayers. So you've got to imagine what kind of decision making we are led to. A government directive, come down, you will do this, our community don't want it, half of us here don't want it, and if we don't, you'll be in breach and you're all going to pay for it. So education has come out everywhere, and it's got to be an all approach. We've got to start with that education, exactly what Councillor Rooker has said previously, and that targeted group around our young people, our young mum and dads. Well, they are onto everything at the moment. They're across everything around the health and well-being of their tamariki, of our mokopuna. So just understand the depth of what it is that we have to look at today, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Mihi tika.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn, for those comments. Absolutely. Councillor Golightly.
Hi, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to also thank Councillor Benney for bringing this to us today. He has worked extremely hard, and of course he has my support. For me as well, it's also about the principle of this and of what I call mass medication, and it reminds me of the last directive of the Minister of Health when we were all told to vaccinate ourselves and ask questions later. So for me, it's like I don't know what anyone's political views are of the United States government, but they're getting it right. You know, they've got a new general of health that are going at it full force. They're not self-medicating. They are fully going after food giants and companies who have caused this mess in the first place by allowing our food to be full of sugar, and so to me that's sort of my view on it, and I will be supporting Councillor Benney.
Thank you, Councillor Golightly, and Councillor Golightly, just so that if you're not aware, the members of the public here are showing support of that, what you've said. Councillor Rooker, you've got a question?
Yeah, just a question.
Yep.
And potentially a really dumb question, so I apologise in advance. But can you filter? Like, does your filter get rid of fluoride in your drinking water, in your tap water?
Councillor Rooker, I have actually got the answer to that. I've actually done research myself, and I was going to put that question. However, the only form of reliable, now Andrew can correct me on this, the only form of reliable filtration is reverse osmosis, and the filtration system costs around about $700 to $1,000 for a home.
Cheap ass. Sweet. Thank you.
Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got to stand for this because it's a pretty important thing, so we've got to stand and deliver. Okay, so I'm not going to cover the points that a lot of other councillors have made, but I want to make a point of just show how unnatural this process has been. We've just come through a COVID situation where the Directive of Health put the same rules in place for all New Zealanders. So it didn't matter whether you're in Invercargill, Taupo or Whangarei, you followed the same directive. Here we are now with this new directive coming down to only 14 councils out of 79. That is discrimination, that is hand-picked, and it is deliberate. I would like to know why it is done that way. If it is such an important health issue, why wasn't it New Zealand-wide? That is a question we need to go back and inform the Director General that we need answers to these questions. So when you break it down, Whangarei District Council, we see ourselves in the top probably 3 councils in New Zealand on the way we've handled our waters. Our water infrastructure is a good heart, and this council has been very, very responsible in developing our water to match the needs of our community. So when we come to the council, we take an oath to represent our ratepayers. I'm standing by that oath. I feel that had the directive gone New Zealand-wide, sure, probably would have considered a different view. But because it was so selective, I don't support that at all. So I'm in a situation where I've already voted not to put water in the fluoride many, many years ago on council. So I'm the only one in this room who's done that. Over that time, we ran a survey prior to that meeting where overwhelmingly our district was in support of not fluoridating water. So I stand true to those words, and I stand true to the ratepayers I represent, that I have not changed my mind on it. All the information coming forward is just so theoretical, but it's what they leave out is the continual cost to us as councillors and council. When the government recently said, we want local bodies to look after their own business and start making some cuts, here we got a council directive, not from a minister, drop down to a paid servant, public servant, making the announcement. I could have taken it if a minister directed us, but to drop it down and then say, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you $100,000 per year, and that's what we think for the first year, and for every year afterwards, and that comes from our ratepayers. That is just gone out of the discussion completely. But when we sit around here trying to find money to do jobs, we've got to take notice of that. The other one is, I spent 4 years as political chair of Kaipa Moana on trying to improve the water quality going into Kaipa Harbour. Out of those discussions, you know, I'd just like to think, if you just took a 20 litres of fluoride down on the edge of our harbour and tipped it into the harbour, what would the reaction be? Because that's what we're doing. That is what we're doing. All the water that goes through our toilet system ends up in the Whangarei Harbour, in Whangarei City. So there's a lot more. I'm staying true to what I've said in the past. Totally support and thank Councillor Benney to bring it forward. And I said last time, 4 months ago, I would not vote to put fluoride in the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Councillor Mackenzie, have you got a...
Yep, I would like to speak to it. Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, some interesting conversation. Thank you, everyone, for the contributions. From my perspective, local government operates under a legislative framework, and local government in New Zealand only has powers conferred upon it by the New Zealand Parliament, and the decision of whether to fluoridate a water supply is not currently a power or function of local authorities. That's just a fact. We know that that power was stripped of us in 2021, and the authority now sits with the Director General of Health. The courts have said as recently as July that there is no justifiable reason for a council to refuse the Director General's directive. And this is a bit technical and boring, but it's really important. So we've received claims that we will not be complying with the elected member's oath if we don't vote for this, due to the requirements of the Section 23 of the Health Act, which is about general powers and duties of local authorities in respect to public health. But we have had it clarified that Section 23 does not override the more specific obligation of Section 116L, local authority must comply with direction. And that clause, using that clause from 23C as a basis for a resolution to not follow the Director General of Health's directive would be inconsistent with the elected member's declaration. So we're breaking our oath by following this. It's just the fact, legal facts. I was reading on through
Councillor Mackenzie, point of order here has been...
It's a legal opinion, not a legal fact. Big difference.
It's the legal advice that we've been given by our legal counsel. It's not an opinion.
Agreed. Yes, Councillor Mackenzie, before we go backwards and forwards here, Councillor Benney has pointed out that it is a legal opinion, and that is correct. It is a legal opinion. So can you reword your statement as a legal opinion?
Well, it's legal advice in my view, Your Worship.
Yep.
Yes, not an opinion. It is an understanding of the law by a legal professional.
Yes, that's correct. So it's not and Councillor Mackenzie, just to clarify the difference there, legal fact means it's actually a ruling of law, whereas a legal opinion means it's an advice of someone who is registered, knows what the law is. So you can always have two legal opinions who are completely directly opposed and they've read the same information. So it is a legal advice, it is legal opinion, it is not legal fact.
It is the sole legal advice that councillors have received.
That is correct.
And there isn't any advice to the contrary.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. I was reading through the Health Act, as you do. The next section is Section 116J. it's an offence to contravene or permit contravention to section 116L. So it is literally an offence to vote for this motion. And okay, let me just, there is no leeway here. We don't have any wiggle room. That's just a legal reality. And look, I completely agree that government imposes stuff on us that we don't like. For example, they are currently making us reverse sensible speed limit changes and spend a whole bunch of money and time on that. I don't like that, but council's going to do it. I don't like having to have a costly referendum on Māori wards, but we're going to do it. And I think the most relevant example is that the previous council, Whangarei District Council, didn't like 3 waters being imposed on it by government, but they were gearing up to do it. Waters dropped out of the LTP. We were doing what the government had asked of us. And the way that that change was taken there, and the way that change came about, was the council challenged the government in the courts, which ultimately failed, but they tried that avenue. And ultimately the way that it was changed was by lobbying MPs, so when a change of government occurred, they changed the law. So I get it. I see that people, this is really important and people want to take a stand, but it is an offence to vote for this. So the correct way to change this is to convince MPs to change the law or overturn the directive in the courts. It is simply not a decision for local government.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Again, appreciate your comments there. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. Just a question, first of all, please. And I couldn't find it because we get so many documents. The results of, do we have the results of the survey that was done recently around fluoride?
Sorry, Councillor, not at hand.
Not at hand. Staff?
As I said, I've got Dominic saying it's not at hand at the present moment. There may be, Andrew may be able to answer that. Now, before Andrew does answer that, I think he needs to also quantify what the survey was about and also how the survey was taken place.
Yeah, I can do that, Your Worship. So the survey was undertaken as a telephone survey, so basically randomly ringing round residents within the district. The results were that of those phoned, 19% strongly disagreed with fluoridation, 11% disagreed, neutral was 29%, agreed 22%, and strongly agree 19%.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just have a couple of comments and going into the speaking side of it now. I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you to the staff for doing as much as they've done to be able to provide us the information. Thank you to Gavin for doing as much as he has done to also keep us in the loop through this whole process, not dropping anything out and keeping things kind of off to the side. So it's been great to have a full discussion through it, or at least listening and understanding where people have been coming from. Comments that have been made through here can be looked at as opinion as well. Whilst one way of saying something to one person is one thing, another way is completely different. The fact that we've already had raised the referendum on fluoride and whatnot from 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, that a lot of our public have not had input into. So, which is why I asked the staff to be able to provide that survey of a closer to now time. I didn't get to have any say back in that day. I didn't have any say in this survey either. And it comes down to us here. I'm just going to tell Toko what Councillor Mackenzie said for all the bits and pieces that he's provided to us about the legislation. I'm not going to go into that detail there. But For me, I trust the scientists that are out there, and for me, from what I've seen, the overwhelming support has been for those who support fluoride. There are people who oppose it. There are scientists who oppose it in many shapes and forms. I do not disregard those. Science is literally trying to disprove things, and if you don't come up with the same, if it doesn't get disproven, it becomes a fact at that point in time, which then can be challenged further on down. That's literally what science is trying to disprove. And you get up to have a consensus eventually. For me, I see our 14 people as, I don't see one major scientist within us. We all have to listen to those of the experts that have been diligently studying this to the nth degree. So today I cannot support this notice of motion. It's just how it has to work for me today.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Councillor Olsen, you have a question?
I do, Your Worship.
Yep.
So just seeking clarity, Andrew, when it came up in the previous discussion about faults and the systems that have failed, you said you were not aware of that, is that correct?
Councillor, I believe what the question that was asked to him at the time was whether he had an opinion on how the other place failed.
Okay, so you are aware of failures within other systems, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. And it's more than, the faults that have occurred have been in more than one system? One council system, is that correct? Is there...
I am aware of other systems having been shut down by councils for various reasons.
Okay, all right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Holst, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. It's been brought up by two speakers so far. It has been said Whangarei District Council is not moving on fluoridation. Those statements were incorrect because our council had gone along and installed the mechanical things needed to aid fluoride. But this decision,
Councillor, are you asking
the question is,
yeah.
did we not write to the Director General to ask clarification on this when we had that motion moved about 5 months ago? And is it correct that they have now got the court case mid or to late 2025 at the High Court? Is that still pending?
Yes, we did write to the Director General of Health. We also wrote to the Minister of Health, and the responses the other question you've asked is there still a court case at the present moment? Yes, there is still a court case at the present moment. Okay. Councillors, I'm just going to check. I've got through the discussions that are going on, Councillor Benney, I've got a couple of questions that are coming back through to me, and I just need a clarification. It's been stated, Andrew, that we'll be looking at about $100,000 a year to maintain the fluoridation. Is that the best estimate, or is that a factual cost?
Through the Chair, yes, we have done some calculations. It's made up of around $20,000 in actual chlorine dosing costs, so the cost of the chemical. And then with any system, it needs maintenance, it needs calibration, that's staff costs and contractor costs. And then there's the possibility of say, breakdowns or shutdowns which need to be attended to. So it's basically a total cost of having the fluoridation system installed and operating on an annual basis.
So it's $100,000 a year estimated to be?
Estimated,
okay,
correct.
Cool, thank you for that. For those people who do not want to have fluoridation, the only option is for reverse osmosis in their own private house?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And in relation to, now this is probably a Rebecca question from a legal side of things, Councillor McKenzie has made it quite clear that there is a legal aspect to what's being done and what's being offered to here. Is there a chance, and you have highlighted in the previous agenda, so I just want to reiterate that, since this decision has been taken out of Council's hands, is what the most common response that you will have, or the most expected response that you will have, is that central government will just dictate the legislation to happen? I'm asking for your legal opinion on this, whether you can answer it or not. So, Dom?
So through the Chair, I don't think we can speculate on the actions of central government. We've given you the risks and the options and what could happen.
Cool.
It's ultimately up to central government what they do.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for clarifying that. And no, I think I'll... Oh, actually, yes, Andrew, probably the one last question was, the survey that was recently done, with the telephone survey, how many people were actually surveyed?
406 responses, 406.
406. Thank you very much for that response on that. Thank you. Councillors, so I'm just going to... Councillor Cooper, yes. Like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'd like to start by, like everybody, thanking Councillor Benney. It's a contentious issue. He knows that within this chamber there is differences of opinion about ways of going about it, yet he has kept us all informed, and I appreciate the depth of the debate and the quality of the debate. So thank you very much, Gavin. I also would like to acknowledge particularly the words of Councillor out there at the heads, what's his name? Patrick Patrick Holmes. Yeah, sorry, Patrick, just a little mind block there.
It's okay, Councillor.
Yeah, you understand why, don't you? But it's the thing is that Patrick, because Councillor Benney mentioned leadership, and he says it's time to stand up as leaders. Now, I think it is easy to stand up and say things that people agree with. What is difficult is to be the voice that presents the alternative side of the argument, and I really appreciated that coming from you, Patrick, and from Councillor Mackenzie. Thank you. I also appreciated what Councillor Harding had to say in that on the surface this looks like a reasonably straightforward decision, but there is a depth to it, as has been illustrated by the arguments, that is perhaps not at first understood. And I guess one of the things for me is we have a very strong voice for anti-fluoride, but who is the voice of those people that are required, that these outcomes are so bad for in terms of their oral health, and then the downstream benefits, effects of that poor oral health. And I guess the Director General of Health is that voice. And so when we say, again, we talk about leadership and we talk about the government trying to look after the people, which are our people as well, there is some leadership there. And it has quite clearly been, we have been clearly made aware of what the wish of that leadership is. So I guess it's an incredibly difficult debate. I was concerned about the ability of our council to keep within the boundaries, because I agree too much. Fluoride is not a good thing. We've had the answer from our engineers that above a very level it just shuts down automatically. So I guess those are the thoughts that we're taking ahead, and we'll let the process carry on. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillors, look, I'll just have my way of saying here. I need to make it very, very clear. Look, I've had a personal view on this for quite some time, and I make it quite clear it is a personal view. As someone who has suffered from mercury poisoning because of being, I won't say tortured, but you'll understand, by the dental system back in the day when I was in primary school, and the use of mercury inside my fillings. And that was actually the cause for the mercury poisoning for me later on in my life. So I'm well aware what the whole effect of oral hygiene is and the effects of things are. So with that, I turned around and asked the Minister of Health, and he knows my view, he knows my personal view about the aspect of adding fluoridation. And I asked him what things central government was actually doing to mitigate the oral health within the country. And he reaffirmed to me that they are still doing the toothbrushes in schools. They are still teaching people how to brush their teeth and why to brush their teeth, which is excellent, because that wasn't back in the day with me. They are also looking at sugar taxes or forms of sugar taxes, and they're also looking at education. Now, the Minister has made it very clear that this is a directive. He has also made it very clear that this is a conscious vote from this council. So if this council votes a certain way, that decision will be looked on by central government in a light that they will ally it to. In other words, their first approach will be education. So, councillors, I'm well aware of the different opinions in the view, and I'm very aware of the legal stance that we've been put under. It is very correct that we are in a situation where it has been dictated to us and told that we must comply. The legislation is very clear that it states that we must comply with the directive from central government. It also is very clear on stating that we must speak the voice of our people, and we are here to represent our people. So while we have a legislation which clearly says we must do one thing, it also says we must do another thing and make the voice available to central government. The reason I seconded this motion is because I believe that this is the step that we can take to actually make sure the voice is heard from our people. Now, this does not mean that they will stop building the equipment. The equipment will still be built, will still be there, will still be put in place. And then it will be us negotiating with central government to how we can go forward from that. Councillors, I'm going to leave it at that point. Now, I see that Councillor Golightly, do you have a question? Question, please.
Yeah, I do have a question, just in regards to what you've said there, Your Worship. Wasn't mercury once deemed safe to use in the dental profession?
Councillor, unfortunately that's a question you've asked to me, which technically this is not the place to do that. However, if there was medical people in the room and within our staff, that will also be agreed. So it was a rhetorical question there, so thank you very much for that. As there's no other questions at this point or statements, I will go to Councillor Benney for his right of reply.
Yeah, very briefly, not as brief as I wanted it to be at the start. So 2 years ago, I couldn't give a hoot about fluoride. But in the last 2 years, I've really researched and read into this and gone as far as wide as I can. Beyond the conspiracy theorists, beyond everybody else, I've had a real good look at this. Common sense tells us this is not the way to go. I've got my own tank at home, it will not affect me. But I'm wondering, what's the next step? Are they going to order me to fluoridate my own water supply? That's really the next step. This is lazy politics. This is not the best way to handle it. Everybody's clear about that. There are better ways. Dr. Shane Reddy in 2021 tried to bring a supplementary bill to put it back in local government's hands. I'm asking Dr. Shane Reddy now, step up, stick with your principles. In yesterday's paper, the Ministry of Health dumped a whole heap of radioactive waste at a rural location in Palmerston North. Documents from this is in the Herald yesterday. Documents there said they decided to keep that secret from the people around there. What secrets are they keeping from us here? I'll ask you that. In New Zealand, it's free already for under 18's dental health, and there is a process in school. We need to ramp that up. We need to increase that. If that's our target audience, and that is our target audience, then we need to ramp that up. There's no doubt about that. The systems are in place, they're just not working. We need to make them work. I just ask, so there is no doubt that pregnant women and children under 6 should not be taking fluoride and should not have excess levels of fluoride. The fluoride levels in your body are determined by how much you drink. If a pregnant woman drinks a lot of water, she is putting this in her system, which is not helpful. Everyone agrees they should not be having high levels of fluoride, pro and anti-scientists. Who is going to look after those people? No one. We will. Waitaki District Council was ordered to fluoridate like us. Their levels, they didn't test for the first month, and they tested and they found their levels were over 1. So they've paused fluoridation at this stage. Same equipment, same directive, same thing. It's not, this isn't precise science. New Zealand has a history of standing up against wrong decisions, dumb decisions, all sorts of decisions. We have a history of that. There are a number of products that were deemed safe that are now no longer safe, that people stood up for, as these people are standing up right now. And I believe we should stand up. These arguments about liability and education, not enforcement, are just supplementary items. The issue is, do we support putting poison in our water for something that is not safe, it is not effective? The argument about the Section 23 of the Health Act, so councillors are obliged to follow a lawful order. This is not a lawful order. That is clear from the High Court, from Justice Radich. It is not a lawful order. So when we say it's fact, it's not fact and such. This is not about the money. This is not about liability. This is about doing the best thing for our people. I encourage you to support my notice of motion. Thank you.
As the right of reply has been had,
We're going to have a division, Your Worship.
are you calling for a division, Councillor?
I am.
Okay. Councillor Holmes is calling for a division. As the right of reply has been had, all those in favour, please raise your right hand. Those in favour?
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid. Oh, sorry, it's
4, yes, that's correct. Yep.
Councillor Olsen, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Benney, His Worship the Mayor, Councillor Golightly.
Yep. And those against?
Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Connop, Councillor Yovich.
You missed me.
Abstain.
And are you abstaining, Councillor?
No, I had my hand up, but I don't think Nicolene saw me.
Is that 4?
Against. Oh, those abstaining? Sorry, Councillor Harding. My apologies, Councillor Harding. I thought you went through before. It has been carried. Thank you, councillors.